Financial aid and school loans. According to the finaid.org website, college costs typically increase at twice the rate of inflation. In the 2007-2008 school year, average costs to attend college full-time ranged from $13,126 at a two-year public college to $35,374 for students attending four-year private colleges and universities. Now, there are many reasons why college costs increase faster than many other costs, but we're not going to take the time to try to examine that. You can save that subject for a future economics class. For this class, it is just needful to examine ways to deal with those costs. Before the presentation delves into the options for paying for school, it would be advisable to provide an obvious reminder. The reminder is to pray. Keep in mind that God has unlimited resources and wants to provide for His people. One former pastor used a little saying that I still believe, quote, "When God guides, He provides," end of quote. If He wants you in college, He can provide for it. It's how He provides that can cause difficulty in our lives. Larry Burkett used to say that, quote, "God is always on time, but rarely early," end of quote. There is wisdom in that saying, although it can be really frustrating to not know exactly how things will work out. Part of this prayer is also to be sure that you are headed in the right direction. You can't expect God to provide for Harvard when He wants you to be at the local junior college for the start of your college career. As you, your friends, your family, and your church pray, you'll need to figure out what is needed financially for the school of your choice. To do this, gather all the data for what God has already provided and the estimated costs from the school. Calculate the additional funds needed and continue to pray. While you are praying, it's time to look at the resources that are available to you through funding and loans. Personally, I think loans should be a last resort and should be carefully used. Taking the full amount of an offered loan so that you can have a nice stereo in your dorm room is not a good way to get out of school with the ability to go where God has chosen to send you. More graduates than I would care to number have graduated from college with a desire to go into the pastorate or onto the mission field and could not go due to the debt burden gathered through their school time. Even graduates going into well-paying fields can be limited in their job choice due to the minimum payments on school loans that could leave them unable to pursue great opportunities that God has put in their paths. The shame is that quite often that debt burden was not for school expenses, but for extra spending as they regarded unused loan amounts as, quote, free money, end of quote. That's a terrible way to go about it. One last question to think about as you decide on how to finance your schooling. If God is not capable of funding your schooling without debt, how can He be capable of funding other paths that He may have for you in your future? Think about it. Larry Burkett, in his Money Matters for College Students, lists three sources of assistance for college costs. The first is scholarships, the second is grants, and the third is student loans. Let's look at each one in turn. For starters, scholarships. First, the common myth about piles of unclaimed scholarships is just that, a myth. Paying a service to go find your ideal scholarship is a waste of your time and money. However, there is money out there and you can use the web to find some of it. A site that might be really helpful is www.scholarshipcoach.com. The site founder, Ben Kaplan, went through Harvard totally on scholarships. He amassed nearly $90,000 in scholarships in a one-year effort. His ideas for successful scholarship search include things like successful database searching techniques or essay writing tips. Many scholarship applications require essays. Or using the summer to build value from your planned activities. Or when to start applying. And the answer is earlier than you might think. Or finally, how to create a suite of tools that can be used over multiple scholarship applications. The nice thing about scholarships is that they don't have to be repaid. They are free money that doesn't always depend on need. Needless to say, this would be a first choice on my list. Also, don't overlook school scholarships. To attract quality students, many schools will offer reduction of tuition scholarships. This means that a school with an annual tuition cost of $15,000 may just charge you $10,000. In effect, that is a $5,000 scholarship. Don't be afraid to ask. And as circumstances develop and enrollment gets closer, you may even want to go back and ask again. You can also let schools compete for you. If one school offers big tuition reduction, go and ask another school where you are interested in going to match it or beat it. Grants. Grants are usually based upon financial need. Like scholarships, they don't have to be repaid. The most common, the federal Pell Grant, has a maximum award of $4,000 per year. That may not sound like much, but the payments and interest on $16,000, which would be four $4,000 grants, when you graduate could easily exceed $125 a month for 20 years, with total payments of over $30,000. Before we get into loans, we should mention some alternative means of financing. The first is work-study programs. These will typically increase the amount of time spent in school, but the savings again are in reduced debt service after graduation. Next, don't overlook the military. If you join a military reserve, you can earn while schooling. You can even be an officer when you graduate. There are downsides to this, so be sure to do a thorough investigation before signing on the dotted line. The one loan that is somewhat different, and we'll hit before we just do the regular loans, is the Federal Perkins Loan. What makes this different is that there can be forgiveness of the loan for choosing certain career options upon graduation. If you are planning on teaching and would be willing to teach in low-income areas, this loan can be forgiven. Can you say, "Whoopee, no payments"? There are other options too. Check with the school financial aid person or on the web. Finally, we get to loans. These are last because they are the least desirable. If you choose this route, you will have a number of options. But those options are laid out for you by filling out the free application for Federal Student Aid, also known as FAFSA. This can be done totally on the web at www.fafsa.ed.gov. The deadlines and procedures for filling out the form are also there. Be sure and pay attention to deadlines. This goes for the FAFSA, any other scholarship applications, or grant applications. Missing deadlines can be just like standing in the backyard burning $100 bills. Use a calendar and mark all the deadlines on it and then look at it regularly. Also, be very careful and honest as you fill out any forms. Proverbs 13:11 starts off saying, "Dishonest money dwindles away," end of quote. Getting a scholarship through error or fraud is getting dishonest money. Even if you get away with it at the school, God's principles are always true, and sooner or later the fruit of your actions will be visited upon you. The two major loans offered by the government are the Stafford Loan or the Perkins Loan. The Stafford Loan can be subsidized or unsubsidized. Subsidized loans accrue no interest during your full-time schooling, and payments typically start 6 months after graduation. Unsubsidized loans accrue interest during your schooling. The Perkins Loan also does not accrue interest during your full-time schooling. Beyond the government loans, there are many private loans available, but few, if any, have a feature of not accruing interest. PLUS loans are taken out by the parents of the student and designed to pick up the difference between financial aid and the total costs. Payments are from the parents and start immediately. Finally, the college may offer some payment plans to help defer the impact of needing to pay a significant amount before the semester starts. Depending on the school, these may or may not have interest charges. Check with the school on this. Also, as you borrow, remember that God said in Psalm 37:21 that it's the wicked that borrow and do not repay. And borrowing more than you can repay is not an excuse, and probably will violate God's principles of surety. Finally, keep in mind that Jesus told us to, quote, "Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it will be opened." End of quote.